Ethan Cross had been in the town of Black Hollow for just over a week when the letter arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with an intricate wax crest, was slipped under the door of his rented cabin. His name was printed in elegant calligraphy on the front. Curious, he tore it open and read the letter inside. "Dear Mr. Cross, you have been honored with the highest tradition of Black Hollow. As the chosen one, your funeral will take place at sundown this Saturday. We encourage you to embrace this blessing and partake in the sacred ritual. It ensures a long and prosperous life." It was signed simply, "The Elders of Black Hollow." Ethan chuckled at first, assuming it was a joke. Maybe the town had some quirky traditions. Small places like this always did. But when he mentioned it at the diner, the laughter died in the air. Conversations halted. The old woman at the counter dropped her spoon into a steaming bowl of soup. "You've been chosen," she whispered. The man beside him, who had been friendly all week, suddenly avoided eye contact. "You should feel honored," he muttered before quickly finishing his drink and leaving. Ethan frowned. Honored for what? What the hell is this funeral thing? The old woman leaned in. "It's a gift," she said. "It means you will live a long, healthy life." "But it's a funeral," Ethan scoffed. "For me, and I'm alive." The woman's lips trembled. "Yes," she said softly. "For now." Black Hollow was an isolated village, surrounded by dense woods that stretched for miles in every direction. No cell service, no internet. It was the kind of place where people still relied on handwritten notices and town meetings to communicate. Ethan, a freelance photographer, had come here to document the town's eerie beauty. Its Gothic churches, the ancient mist-covered cemetery, the way the fog clung to the streets like ghosts whispering in the night. He hadn't expected to stumble into an actual living nightmare. His unease grew when he noticed how the townsfolk treated him after the letter arrived. No one would look him in the eye. Some people crossed the street to avoid him. The bartender, who had been chatty before, now refused to serve him. "You're leaving after the funeral, right?" the innkeeper asked. Ethan scowled. "No, I wasn't planning on attending at all." The innkeeper paled. You must. If you refuse, the consequences could be dire. This tradition has been honored for over 2 centuries. "Then explain it to me," Ethan demanded. "What actually happens?" The man hesitated. "The funeral is symbolic," he finally said. "You must lie in the coffin, listen to the eulogies, and be buried, briefly. It represents the death of misfortune in your life. Those who partake in the ritual go on to live well into old age." Ethan scoffed. "That's ridiculous." "It's true," the man insisted. "Everyone who has ever had their funeral lived past 90. Ethan frowned. "And if someone refuses?" The innkeeper swallowed. "No one refuses." Despite his every instinct screaming at him to leave, Ethan stayed. Part of him was fascinated. The logical side of his brain told him it was just an elaborate superstition, one of those weird cultural rituals like throwing salt over your shoulder or knocking on wood. He told himself it was a performance, like a play. That's why he agreed when the elders came to escort him to the ceremony. The entire town gathered in the cemetery at dusk, dressed in mourning clothes. A polished wooden coffin rested on a raised platform in the center, surrounded by flickering candles. The air smelled of damp earth and burning incense. A priest stood beside the coffin, holding a heavy, leather-bound book. "Come forth, Ethan Cross," he intoned. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to step forward. The elders gestured for him to climb into the coffin. He let out a nervous laugh. "You guys are really committed to this, huh?" No one laughed. He exhaled, shaking off the unease, and climbed in. The inside was lined with deep purple velvet. It was surprisingly comfortable. The moment he settled in, the priest began reading from the book. "We gather here to mourn the passing of Ethan Cross. May misfortune die with him. May he be reborn anew." One by one, the townsfolk stepped forward, delivering eulogies. Some were heartfelt, others were unnervingly specific, talking about his good deeds and memories that felt too personal for a group of people he barely knew. Ethan's amusement waned. Something was wrong. Then, the coffin lid slammed shut. Panic surged through Ethan as he pounded against the wooden lid. "All right, joke's over," he shouted. Silence. Then he heard the shovel. Dirt hit the coffin in heavy, muffled thuds. His breath came in short gasps. This wasn't a game. They were actually burying him. "Help!" he screamed, kicking wildly. "Let me out!" The dirt kept coming. He struggled against the velvet lining, pushing with all his strength, but the weight of the soil pressed down, suffocating him. The air was thick, humid, and vanishing quickly. His mind spiraled. Was this how it ended? Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the dirt stopped falling. The coffin creaked open, and light flooded in. Ethan gasped, sucking in fresh air. Hands reached down, pulling him out of the grave. The priest smiled. "The ritual is complete. You have been reborn." The townsfolk cheered. Ethan trembled, too weak to resist as they helped him stand. His body was slick with sweat, his heart hammering against his ribs. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Then he turned and froze. There was another Ethan standing among the crowd. Identical. A perfect copy. The imposter met his gaze with an eerie, knowing smile. And then, before Ethan could even scream, the crowd surged forward, grabbing him, dragging him back toward the open grave. "No," he gasped. "No." They shoved him in. The dirt began to fall again. This time, no one stopped. The next morning, the people of Black Hollow went about their day as usual. A man who looked exactly like Ethan Cross strolled into the diner, took his usual seat, and ordered breakfast. The old woman at the counter smiled. "How are you feeling today?" "Like a new man," Ethan said, grinning. The innkeeper chuckled. "That's the spirit." The real Ethan was gone. The town's secret remained safe, and the ritual continued, as it always had, as it always would.